Can you cash check at bank that isn't yours? No. Banks may refuse to cash checks without an account. When it comes to cashing a check at a bank that isn't yours, the simple answer is no, you can't do it easily. Banks and credit unions are not obligated to cash a check if neither the payee, the person the check is made out to, nor the person presenting the check has an account with that bank. Each bank and credit union sets its own policies regarding check cashing, and many institutions have a strict policy against cashing checks for non-account holders. Even if you have a legitimate reason for wanting to cash a check at a bank where you don't have an account, the bank may still refuse to provide the service. A common scenario that people encounter is when they receive a check made out to them but do not have an account with the bank that issued the check. In such cases, the best course of action is to visit a bank where you hold an account. If you don't have an account at any bank, you might face difficulties in cashing the check. Can I cash someone else's check at my bank? Policies vary. Banks may accept third-party checks based on rules. Cashing someone else's check at your bank involves dealing with what is known as a third-party check. This refers to a check made out to someone else, but the payee endorses it over to you. Whether or not a bank allows this practice depends on its individual policies. There is no federal law mandating that banks must accept third-party checks. Instead, each bank can establish its own rules regarding this matter. Some banks may readily accept third-party checks, while others might have stricter policies or even refuse them altogether. Banks that do accept third-party checks usually have specific requirements that must be met. For instance, they may require both the payee, the person the check is made out to, and the person cashing the check to be present. Additionally, the bank may insist on proper identification to verify the identities of both individuals involved in the transaction. It's crucial to be aware of your bank's policy on third-party checks before attempting to cash one. If your bank does not allow it, you may need to explore other options, such as asking the check writer to issue a new check in your name or opening an account at the bank that issued the check. Is it possible to cash a check without an ID? Yes, you can cash a check without ID using alternatives. Cashing a check without proper identification is challenging but not impossible. If you don't have a bank account, you can still cash a check at the issuing bank or a check cashing store. However, keep in mind that these establishments may have their own set of rules and fees for providing this service. If you've lost your ID and need to cash a check, there are alternative methods you can consider. One option is to use an ATM. Some banks allow you to deposit a check into an ATM without presenting identification. However, this option may vary, and it's essential to check with your bank beforehand. Another possibility is to sign the check over to someone else. This involves writing a third-party endorsement on the back of the check, allowing another person to cash it on your behalf. Keep in mind that not all banks accept third-party endorsements, so it's crucial to confirm with the bank's policies before attempting this method. While there are ways to cash a check without ID, it's important to note that these alternatives may come with limitations and potential fees. Additionally, the acceptance of checks without proper identification varies among financial institutions and check cashing services. Can a check made out to cash be cashed at any bank? Technically yes, but most banks require proper endorsement. A check made out to cash may technically be cashed at any bank, but there are nuances to consider. Some banks have specific policies regarding checks made out to cash, requiring that the person cashing the check be the same person to whom the check is addressed. In practice, most anyone could potentially cash a check made out to cash, as long as they have the physical check in hand. However, banks are likely to impose restrictions to ensure the legitimacy of the transaction. One such requirement is that the check needs to be endorsed on the back by the person attempting to cash it. Endorsing a check involves signing the back of the check, indicating that the payee authorizes the check to be cashed or deposited. Without proper endorsement, banks may refuse to process the transaction. Therefore, even though a check made out to cash theoretically allows flexibility in terms of where it can be cashed, adhering to the bank's endorsement policies is crucial. It's important to note that the specifics of check cashing policies, including those for checks made out to cash, can vary among different banks. Before attempting to cash such a check, it's advisable to check with the bank's policies to avoid any potential issues or rejections during the transaction.